Broadcasting live. It's America's longest running talk show on computers. It's Computer America, bringing you the biggest names in technology with guest interviews, new products, and your emails. Listen live at computeramerica.com on any device around the world. Email the show at live@computeramerica.com or find us on social media. Be sure to check out our website for contests, giveaways, show notes, live video stream, podcasts, and more. You're listening to Computer America.
Hello and welcome everyone into the Computer America Show. We are the nation's longest running nationally syndicated radio talk show on computers and technology turned podcast. Everyone, welcome into the program. I hope that you're doing well. You have had a fantastic week and you are ready for some Computer America. So with that being said, joining us today is of course Ralph Bond. He is our science and technology trends correspondent, and he joins us every single Friday to talk about a number of different stories. And he of course is going to introduce what we try to do on our segment, but just suffice to say, it's a great way to head into the weekend, a little bit more upbeat, because man, what a crazy week. But hey, you survived it, I survived it, I assume you survived it. Ladies and gentlemen, let's go ahead and jump right in. Oh, actually, computeramerica.com. That is where you'll find everything, including the show notes, past shows, future shows. And if, hey, you are like, this Ben guy, what he does on his own, no interest. We only care about what Ralph has to say. Well, it's official. We have put it at the top of our page. We have the home, a link to the home, the video, the audio archive, the podcast. And then right after that is Ralph Bond, which actually, let's see if how quickly I can do this. So computeramerica.com, and let's go ahead and load that up. If you're watching the video portion, that'll be available on YouTube and of course Twitch. But yeah, we're going to pull this up in just a second, but we're going to show Ralph's little corner of our website, and it includes of course so much. So let's just pull this up here. And Ralph, welcome onto the program. Since I'm switching to this, you're going to be there, so hi.
Hey, great stuff. Oh, I love it.
Yeah, so this is the website.
You've made my ego. You fed my ego today.
Absolutely. So this is the website, of course, and Computer America that you all know and love. Home, podcast, video, and then Ralph Bond. If you click Ralph Bond right up there next to tech support at the top there, and it will take you to this page right here where that face. It's Science and Tech Trends with Ralph Bond, and this will automatically be. This is already an 80 video deep long playlist of all of Ralph's segments going back the last 80 times he was here on the show. And this will be the most recent one, whenever we upload it. And then below that will be the show notes. So this is for the 28th, the 21st, the 14th, 31st, like clockwork. Every week he joins us, and that'll be right there. So of course we'll have a link to his website as well if you want. He provides the full show notes and a little bit extra there. But ladies and gentlemen, there's a new Ralph Bond segment. We highly encourage you to check it out if you want the full experience, and not just one segment but multiple segments of Ralph. So Ralph, welcome onto the program.
It's great to be back, and wow, my ego is being fed greatly today. Thank you so much. It's so wonderful. I just love it. I'd love to be able to tell my friends, hey, just go to the computeramerica.com and click my link.
Yeah. We try to make it as simple. So Computer America /Ralph-Bond, and that will take you to that page. So, ladies and gentlemen, but all that aside, you know how to get to us because obviously, hey, you're here and you're listening. Ralph, why don't you tell the nice folks, if it is their first time, what you try to accomplish here on our segment?
You bet. Well, Ben, I'm an aggregator of science and tech news features I find by monitoring a host of outlets on the web. And I look for stories a lot of times that just don't capture mainstream press attention because, of course, the world is so worried about whether we're going to go into default with our budget on the country and, guns, terrible shootings, all this stuff going on every day, every week. Ugh. So this stuff kind of flies under the radar, but it's great news. It's very important. And I'm always on the lookout for news that gives us a sense of where we're headed in robotics, medical technology, sustainable energy technology, transportation advances, space research, physics, you name it, across the board. And the one thing that Ben and I do with the show notes is give you the essential high points of each one of these stories about science and technology advancements. And the idea is you come out to computeramerica.com, get the show notes for today's show. If you want to dive deeper, there'll be links, pictures. Sometimes we have links to videos. All of that's provided for you. So please come out to computeramerica.com. And what we try to do is break this down into very digestible, easy to understand points. And as Ben was alluding to, every one of these stories and pretty much everything I do with the show is leave you feeling good. Leave you feeling optimistic about the future based on what we're doing in science and technology. So today we've got a real mixed bag for you.
Yeah, everything from the deep oceans to the oceans rising up to construction. And you have some very, very innovative stories that we have definitely not covered here on the show this week. So Ralph, if you'd like to start with story number 1, that's a great place to go.
All right, here we go. So this comes from Scientific American, a story written by Allison Parshall. And the headline here is New Color Changing Coating Could Both Heat and Cool Buildings. And as Ben knows, and some of the longtime listeners knows, I spent the last 10 years of my career with Autodesk, and I was lucky enough to serve in the architecture, engineering, and construction division of Autodesk. And so all things relating to technology for today's buildings are a real keen interest to me, and that's why this story just jumped out at me. But let's get into it. Here's a little setup. According to some estimates, buildings account for 30% of global energy consumption. Let that sink in for a second. 30%. And the buildings emit 10% of all global greenhouse gas. And about half of this energy footprint is attributed to heating and cooling of interior spaces, no surprise. And although many buildings have walls packed with insulation to maintain an ideal temperature, we all know that, but others, especially older buildings, say 90 to 100 years and earlier, are shockingly energy inefficient. Again, no surprise. Well, scientists have been working on higher tech solutions to this problem for decades. Now, materials scientists at the University of Chicago Pritzker School of Molecular Engineering have developed a color-changing film that can switch between heating and cooling modes. I'm going to stop for a second. This is not in the show notes. It's just a little comment.
Right.
I don't know when it was, last year or sometime in the past, Ben, we talked about a story where it was Australian technology where they're making windows that can generate energy and shift color and so forth and so on.
Yeah.
But this is going to be a whole building body wrap technology we're going to talk about. So it's going from windows to the entire structure, which is why this is such an exciting story. So the film that's created, which is thinner than a credit card, operates on very little electrical energy, and you'll see the electrical component of this in a moment, and could one day envelop or wrap even the most wasteful of buildings, meaning older buildings, to help radiate unwanted heat in the summer and trap it during the winter. And the new technology, this is great stuff. The new technology takes advantage of a natural phenomenon called radiative cooling. And this is the process that cools the outdoor temperatures at night and helps cool the earth as a whole. So, at night, when there's no sunshine, the heat on the surface of the earth radiates out. That's what we're talking about. It's
True.
Using that phenomenon, that natural principle. And the new coatings, and this is what's so fun, the new coatings they develop for buildings can switch between high and low heat emission with a simple zap or application of electricity. And the new material starts in the cooling mode. Now, here's where it gets really interesting, at least in my opinion. We geek out here. Beneath an incredibly thin electrical conductor lies a small reservoir of water with copper ions dissolved inside. In this state, the device naturally radiates heat, cooling the inside of the building. And a quick side note here, an ion is an atom or molecule with a net electric charge due to the loss or gain of one or more electrons. Okay, now with that said going on, Then, when the conductor layer applies a small electric charge, the dissolved copper deposits on its surface form a thin layer over the water reservoir. Because copper emits very little of the mid-infrared heat it absorbs, the device now traps heat. That's a lot of words coming at you, a lot of gobbledygook, but if you read it a couple of times, it'll sink in and you go, oh, I get it.
Right. Yeah, you apply the current, and it's very good at, trapping, and that is a very apt word, trapping that energy in the copper ions. So
right.
Makes sense.
Right. And my understanding from reading deeper in the article than we do in the show notes, it's not much electricity involved at all, which is kind of cool too, and probably could easily be sourced from solar panels. So in the show notes, and this is why the show notes are so important, folks, come out and get the show notes. I have an optional side note. It's a little tutorial that I picked up regarding what is infrared and the 3 types of infrared and so forth, because it relates to the mid-infrared or middle infrared band that we're talking about here in this technology. So I'm not going to read through that. That's there in the show notes. Come on out and grab those. Take a look at that if you're interested in getting a tune-up on infrared. For the video part, if you're seeing this diagram that they included in the third source that you kind of linked, there's this diagram kind of shows, the only difference between cooling and heating mode is, again, that thin layer of the copper. Right.
So, and you kind of see where the copper will, release the heat that is trapped inside the unit instead of reflecting it. So
that's a wonderful illustration. It just that really tells the story right there and why it's so important. It's so hard to do that in words. The picture there, beautiful, love it. So going on, this change of state, trapping heat or releasing heat can be reversed, so you can oscillate, you can go back and forth, can be reversed again and again in this technology, although the researchers are very honest. They said repeated uses have diminishing returns after about 1,000 cycles. Both cooling and heating modes are less efficient. They don't go away, but they diminish. It's sort of like the life of a battery over time, right? How much it goes down and so forth is a big question I had, and we'll see this technology. And this goes back to a point, Ben, by the way, a segue here for a moment. A lot of times what Ben and I do with this show on Friday is talk about things that aren't finished goods, aren't things you're going to go and buy at the store or have delivered in your buildings right now. It's stuff that's coming. It's stuff that's in development. So this is a good example of that, where they say, they've got this technology, they've figured this out, but it after repeated returns, 1,000 cycles, it's going to diminish. So I'm sure they're going to work on this, maybe make improvements, and someday this may be a huge help. So we're not talking about right now today. We're talking about into the future, right? Okay, so the researchers estimate that this technology, if applied as a film to the outside of a building, so it's existing building, you can put this film on it. You're not talking about deconstructing anything. You're just talking about wrapping a building, okay? Right. If you did this, it could save, they estimate, 8.4% of the energy used for heating and cooling. Now, you may say 8.4%. But no, if you add this up and you multiply it across millions upon millions of buildings on this planet, it could be very significant. And it's intended, the whole intent of this technology is to go for climates that experience drastic swings in temperatures throughout the year. That was their goal, but of course could be applied anywhere. And this is kind of fun. The building could also change color from a dark white in the summer when it's hot to a metallic copper color in the winter. Though the film could be covered with a special paint that wouldn't interfere with the mid-infrared radiation process of the technology. So that's kind of fun. It's cool stuff. They're
trying to make it appealing to, if this ever does make it to market, trying to make it appealing to consumers who want to, paint their house the color that they want to, because the HOA won't let us paint it blue, even though blue would look fantastic. But I digress. Ralph, even in its current state of technology, it can only, do about 1,000 changes before, I guess, the whole, all the chemistry inside of it starts to break down and, not be as efficient. I'm curious if even wrapping something and just switching it twice a year, after let's say November, switch it to kind of heat radiating, and after April, switch it to heat, kind of reflecting. Even if you just did it, once or twice a year off, I wonder if that would make any kind of notable change, today.
Oh yeah. Well, you know what, Ben, your comment inspires me to think about even my home heating system, which is all, I can look at it on my phone and all this groovy stuff.
Yeah.
But where you could say, do this game when the temperature reaches X heat, but not below that, right? So you conserve that cycle. And then you could say, reverse that, when it's this cold or colder, otherwise don't do it, to save on the cycles. So that's an interesting point.
Yeah, there's so much, and obviously the end result of this technology, when it makes to market, it will change, hopefully, hour by hour, day by day, and it will, help insulate or cool a building, keep it constant temperature that's comfortable for us, and reducing the energy consumption it takes to heat or cool a building by, 10% or more. But, thinking about how to get it to a usable state today, that's always fun. And of course, you could even take it a step further and just say, Ralph, that's a lot of data. I wonder how you process that much data. And the answer would be something like artificial intelligence, which is something that we've brought up in a lot of different articles, and it really is having a massive impact on on society today. And actually, just a segue before we get into story 2. And by the way, that was a segue to story 2 because story 2 is AI based. Ralph, did you hear about the Writers Guild of America, the Writers Guild going on strike? I think everyone has probably heard about that. But one of the stipulations to the strike, which the studios wouldn't agree to, was promise us that you won't replace us with generative AI script writers.
Yes.
Essentially, write me a 10-page script for a sitcom that includes these characters and does this, and then it would spit something out that was very, piecemeal of all other scripts that are fed into it. Ralph, I found that very interesting that the studios would not agree to something like that. But of course, studios are obviously not going to agree to much because they're the one being, striked. But yeah, that was strange.
Yeah, it's very interesting. And just a personal note on that, I'd like to make up goofy little stories for my grandkids, silly, crazy little stories. So I took Bard, the Google version of Chat GPT, right? And I said, tell me a story about a little girl who can hear plants talking to her. And what would an old tree say to this child? Because was it last week or a couple of weeks ago? Anyway, we had the story about how scientists in Israel have determined that plants emit sounds that
I remember
not in the range that we can hear, but they do emit sounds, and they emit sounds that differ based on their state of whether they're in drought or whether they're healthy or on and on. So I asked the Bard to do this. It came back with 3 or 4 different variations of a story. And it was a little awkward and so forth, but I could take one of them and fix it with my human intervention and create something, so I could see why those writers are upset. So
it's really that's really at the heart of AI, where it's not currently doing everything by itself, but it can give you something that you can edit and fix and work on, and it'll do 80% of the work, and it's up to the human to get it the other 20%, and that's different. That's new. So
absolutely.
So there you go. That's our side. AI. I'm sure that a lot of people are probably tired of the headlines that it drives, but here's a good use of AI that I think everyone can agree on with story number 2.
There you go. It's a good example of how we leave you feeling better, not worse, at the end of the week. So the headline here is: new artificial intelligence-based tsunami warning software could help save lives. Great headline. Popular Science story by Jamie Dickman. And some really powerful imaging there, as you're showing on the screen for those of you who are watching our show. To appreciate why this is significant news, the author of the article opened with an explanation of current tsunami detection technology. But I'm going to insert a quick little aside for me, and it's a super quick tutorial on just a refresh on what tsunamis are. So tsunamis, of course, are giant waves caused by earthquakes or volcanic eruptions under the sea. Out of the depths of the ocean, tsunami waves do not dramatically increase in height, but as the waves travel inland, they build up to higher and higher heights as the depth of the ocean decreases. That's kind of interesting. There's a link there to get that information from the NOAA.
You know, and I will say that this childhood image in my head did not go away until probably a couple of years ago, Ralph, where when I think about wave, I think about literally cartoons where, you know, the giant wave that's barely cresting, you know, just is like 10 stories high, and it crashes into that's not quite what it is. It's all the water coming out, and then it just seemingly all the water just keeps going and going and building and building. So it's just, you know, the water level goes from, you know, 1 foot, 2 foot, 3 foot, all over the course of a couple minutes. But, you know, this 100-foot wave means that by the end of it, they will, over an hour, 2 hours, it will increase to 100 feet tall. It's not the giant face of a wave, Ralph, like I was thinking.
Yeah. It's more like that image you see in our show notes. It's kind of another way of thinking about a tsunami is kind of a gigantic raising up and surging. Yeah, like a huge, mega high tide kind of experience as well. So it takes different forms. It's kind of interesting. So current tsunami warning systems are based in part on monitoring seismic waves generated by undersea earthquakes. So there's a variety of technologies. We're going to talk about a mix, okay? And data from seismographs, which measure and record details of earthquakes such as the force and duration, and hydrophones are transmitted to control centers that can issue a tsunami warning, setting off sirens and other local warnings on the land. These existing tsunami monitors also verify an oncoming wave with data from ocean buoys. So buoys are out there in the ocean that outline the coasts of our continents on Earth. Now, earthquakes of 7.5 magnitude or above can generate a tsunami, though not all undersea earthquakes do, causing an occasional false alarm. False alarms is important, folks, for this story, because this AI technology we're going to talk about here very soon is going to help diminish false alarms. That's one of the wonderful things.
Very concerning for a lot of people that live along the coast, and I know that you're in Oregon, and I'm sure a lot of people on, you know, the west coast of the United States and Alaska, and obviously everyone around the Ring of Fire. Every time there's any kind of earthquake, Ralph, I know that they have, you know, they put up an image where it's like the entire United States, the entire coastal United States, and they're like, you know, they paint in yellow and red, and they're like, you know, a tsunami warning and a tsunami watch, and that's like the best we can do right now is like, you know, just assume that you're about to get wiped out. And, you know, that's the safest option, but it's not very helpful to a lot of people.
No. Yeah, right. Exactly right. And that's, again, why this story, I think, is so important. So some more data points here. Tsunamis travel at an average speed of 500 miles per hour. What? The speed of a jet plane in the open ocean. So that's the qualifier, in the open ocean. Now, when they approach a coastline, the tsunami waves slow down to the speed of a car, about 30 to 50 miles an hour, which still scares the pants off of me. But anyway, so after the buoys that we talked about a moment ago are triggered, they issue tsunami warnings, leaving little time for evacuation. By the time the waves reach the buoys, people have only a few hours at the most to evacuate. So again, setting the stage for what's the problem. All right, with all of this said, all of this background, here's the big news. To tackle this problem, researchers at Cardiff University in Wales, have developed new software that can analyze real-time data from hydrophones, ocean buoys, and seismographs in seconds. So it's taking advantage of what's already there, not throwing it away. It's using that data and using artificial intelligence to analyze it. That's the key. So going on, the researchers hope their system can be integrated into existing technology, saying that with it, monitoring centers could issue warnings faster and with more accuracy. And we're going to find out just how fast in a moment. The new system uses two algorithms in tandem to evaluate tsunamis. An artificial intelligence model evaluates the earthquake's magnitude and type, while an analytical model estimates the resulting tsunami's size and direction. Once the software receives the necessary data, it can predict the tsunami's source, size, and coasts of impact where it's going to hit in about, get ready, 17 seconds. What?
It's crazy.
It's wonderful. The AI software can also, but wait, there's more. The AI software can also differentiate between types of earthquakes and their likelihood of causing tsunamis, a common problem faced by current systems. So again, it's able to differentiate. A little detail here. Vertical earthquakes that rise or lower the ocean floor are much more likely to cause tsunamis, whereas those with a horizontal tectonic slip do not. That's where the plates slip.
Right. Those are the images that we saw in like places like Europe and Italy, where you see like a fence that was pre-earthquake. You saw that fence and they were offset each other by about 20 feet. Yeah.
Right. So the vertical earthquakes or horizontal tectonic slip do not. Though they can produce similar seismic activity. What we're trying to say, the horizontal or the vertical, they can produce similar seismic activity, leading to false alarms. Because again, the horizontal tectonic.
I never really knew.
Yeah, isn't that something?
Yeah, I never really knew. Like, obviously, we knew that earthquakes cause tsunamis. I never really had it spelled out to me that simply why some earthquakes cause tsunamis and some don't. And it makes a lot of sense. If you're just doing that slip versus the upheaval, big difference.
Yeah. Well, yeah, think of like a plunger in your toilet, not to be gross, but if you go up and down, right, that's what's happening with the tsunamis versus the slippage of the tectonic plates. Okay, so the Cardiff University in Wales researchers trained their program with historical data from more than 200 earthquakes, using seismic waves to evaluate the quake's epicenter and acoustic gravity waves to determine the size and scale of the tsunamis. Now, acoustic gravity waves are sound waves that move through the ocean at much faster speeds than the ocean waves themselves, offering a faster method of prediction. So I know that we've given you a huge bowl full of information here to digest, but the nut of it is AI taking advantage of what we already have as detection systems in place, but crunching it down and through training it with machine learning, 17 seconds. It can say, okay, here's where this thing's going to hit. Here's how big it's going to be, blah, 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 blah. What a gift. And you mentioned the West Coast. I'm in Oregon, as you mentioned. There's a town called Seaside in Oregon where the ground level of that town is absolutely like this with the ocean.
Yeah.
And they have tsunami warning signs and evacuation route, head this way, blah, 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 all this sort of stuff all over that town. And because it's such a low lining area there meeting the ocean, and if there's ever a tsunami for us, that town's going to get hit really hard.
Yeah. As someone who grew up in South Florida and our elevation was about -5 feet,
there you go.
I definitely sympathize. Although not a lot of tsunami warnings on the East Coast, I will say, thankfully. So
true,
good stuff there. And also you mentioned it very quickly in passing, but the idea of a hydrophone, and there at the end of the show notes, mentioning the what was that? The gravity, acoustic gravity waves that I guess the hydrophones then pick up. Hey, who knew? A lot goes into making sure that we don't end up hurt thanks to natural disasters. So I'm glad someone's thinking about it, because, ladies and gentlemen, we saw what happened in Japan. When they even had state-of-the-art technology kind of helping them, but didn't help that much. And I think we're a lot better off than we used to be, and it's getting better all the time. And hey, AI plays a role in that as well. Who knew? So that's true. Story number 2, story number 3, also in the ocean, but this one is, instead of protecting you from natural disaster, this is the ocean and its own little natural disaster that's happening to it, where, Ralph, it's like, people are very interested in space, which they should be. And the ocean also gets, I think, a lot of credit as well for being an undiscovered, a totally explorable place that is much easier to explore than the vast reaches of, space. So the ocean, but it's difficult. You ever tried to hold your breath? You can't do it for that long, and you can't really count things very well down there. Right. Well, story number 3 hopes to, fix this, and hey, might have a lot of discoveries in store for us.
Yeah, this is a really fun story. I love it. I got it from CNN. An article by Katie Hunt, headline, Ocean Census, that's the name of the project. Ocean Census Research Project aims to discover 100,000 previously unknown marine species. That's the sort of general goal they've set for themselves. So here we go. A huge new research project called Ocean Census aims to identify, their goal is to identify up to 100,000 unknown species in the next 10 years. So this is a long-range project, allowing scientists to better understand and protect, to your point, Ben. So it's to understand, discover, understand, and then figure out how to protect the deep sea ecosystem, which is under threat just like every other part of the planet. The project, announced at a launch event in London on April 27, so very recently, which will be the biggest ocean survey to date, is being led by Nekton, that's Nekton, a UK-based marine science and conservation institute, and funded, I love this international part of it, funded by the Nippon Foundation, a nonprofit foundation based in Japan. Isn't that wonderful? There are huge gaps. This was so interesting to me. There are huge gaps in our knowledge of the ocean depths. Of the 2.2 million species believed to exist in the Earth's oceans, only 240,000 have been described by scientists, according to the census. Only 240,000 of 2.2 million believed species to exist. How about that? The initiative builds on past projects such as the Census of Marine Life, which concluded in 2010 and identified 6,000 potential new ocean species. So you can see this goal of 100,000 is very aggressive. New advances in technology since 2010 include high-resolution underwater imaging, machine learning, ding, 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 AI, there you go, and sequencing DNA contained in seawater. So these are the newer technologies since 2010, just not that long ago, that they're going to apply in this new effort. Now, all living organisms, including humans, disperse genetic material into the environment. And the project will also make use of new and accessible techniques to sample waterborne DNA to detect and track species. That's interesting too, I think.
So
today,
So even if they don't actually see something like, let's say giant squid, for instance, if they just get, for humans, I guess it's like little skin particle, skin cells that fall off of us,
exactly.
and stuff like that. If they just get even a hint at one of these, they can at least get the DNA and detect. That's crazy.
It is crazy, and you can imagine how AI is going to be able to, help quickly evaluate and sort this all out too. So today, new types of technology are making it much easier for sea creatures to be studied in their natural habitat, which is an allusion to what we just described. And these include tools like underwater laser scanning that can scan gelatinous creatures such as jellyfish that are hard to study on land. Underwater laser scanning. Think of all the technologies we've just been talking about. A shopping list of new stuff, great new stuff that they're going to use in this effort. So the Ocean Census Project will also help to identify how marine ecosystems are responding to the climate crisis and evaluate how marine life could adapt to a warmer climate. So it's just this wonderful collection of new technologies, an international effort. Bravo, I love it, and it's going to be fun to see over the next 10 years what these folks can discover. Pretty cool stuff.
Yeah, and I know that 2010 seems like a long time ago, or at least it doesn't to me, but to a lot of people, 2010, to think, Ralph, that, we're 13 years away from the last large-scale study that they, of this nature that they did. And, there's so many different things. I guess the real goal of it, which you said at the beginning of the article, is you can't protect something. You can't, know that you're hurting something until you know what's down there, and you can categorize it. You can kind of say, here are the different species, here's what's here. And, I guess knowing about these things, Ralph, is the first step to protecting them, which is what they're trying to do, is just figure out what the heck is even down there.
Yeah, exactly. So I just love this story. It's a little different, but kind of fun.
No, and it's definitely high tech, and they're going to roll a lot into it. So there you go. And it wasn't even that long ago that we had like truly innovative submersibles, and those came out in like the 90s, and and that we were able to send people down there, and we realized, oh, it's not just some giant barren wasteland down there. There are actual animals and environments, and it's really, really cool down there. So there you go.
And Ben, one little side note, there's a picture we showed in the show notes of one of these submersibles with a human operator, but there's a lot of these that are unmanned drones that overcome the issue of, oh, gee, how are we going to keep oxygen to keep breathing? No, forget all that. Just send down the drones. And that's going to be, I'm sure, a big part of this effort as well.
Drones make a lot of sense, especially in deep underwater settings. Yes. So there you go. Story number 4, or story number 3. Now we move on to story number 4, and this one is really cool because a lot of these incurable diseases, thanks to a lot of recent technology, I'm thinking like CRISPR, AI definitely has helped with diagnosing and earlier diagnosing. Ralph, it seems like we're fine, and obviously we don't have a magic. Although we did cure, we as in the humans, have cured like 3 people of cancer by doing some kind of stem cell replacement CRISPR kind of thing. So hopefully soon or sometime soon, people with cancer have a leg up. But there's a lot of different diseases, and Alzheimer's has been a big one on a lot of people's radars, because seeing a family member go through that is, you can see why it's so important to get this one on, kind of in hand. It's a horrible, horrible disease, and we're making a lot of advancements. So, Ralph, story number 4, hey, hopefully another one coming up.
Yeah. And this is a good example, folks. If you're new to the show, what Ben and I usually do at the end of each of these Friday segments is typically I pick out a very encouraging, very hopeful, uplifting medical technology story. So that's what this is. The headline here is, a new peptide may hold potential as an Alzheimer's treatment. Got this from MIT News, Massachusetts Institute of Technology News, story by Anne Trafton. Great story. We've got the link in the show notes once again, folks. So if you don't want to dive deeper, you can, because we're really going to gloss over this, just the high points. So MIT neuroscientists have found a way to reverse neurodegeneration. Let that sink in. They found a way to reverse neurodegeneration and other symptoms of Alzheimer's disease by interfering with an enzyme that is typically overactive in the brains of Alzheimer's patients. So again, you're an Alzheimer's sufferer, you have an enzyme that's overactive, that's causing this problem, part of the real issue here. And when researchers treated mice, God, how many mice have given their lives for us, right? Mm-hmm. When researchers treated mice with the new peptide that blocks the hyperactive version of an enzyme called CDK5, they found dramatic reductions in neurodegeneration and DNA damage in the brain. So by blocking this overactive enzyme, CDK5, this is the result: dramatic reduction in neurodegeneration and DNA damage in the brain. Wow. By the way, peptides are short chains of amino acids linked by peptide bonds. You can dive deeper into that if you want to as well. These mice treated with a new peptide also showed improvements in their ability to perform tasks such as learning to navigate a water maze. That would be interesting to see. With further testing, the researchers hope that this new peptide could eventually be used as a treatment for patients, humans, of course, with Alzheimer's disease and other forms of dementia that have CDK5 enzyme overaction or overactivity. There I leave you with an upbeat, hopeful thing for the future. It's not here and not being applied to humans right now today, but thanks to the folks at MIT, we may see something that could be a fabulous treatment for our Alzheimer's patients.
No, the images on the video portion really show it's not like 100% kind of reducing this and I guess you wouldn't want to, because that's kind of activity, but it's not as blurry and everything looks a little bit sharper. It's not as disruptive down here in the blue, especially from one to the next. It's really showing improvement. What kind of improvement? That's above my head. I'm so lost on a lot of this, Ralph. But I will say that even just a potential treatment for even if it's just for like the symptoms, not even a total and complete cure, but something that you can kind of do and take and, administer, and it would improve people's lives, that alone would be something newsworthy. And it was, because, hey, it was here on our show with Ralph. So, ladies and gentlemen, if you want to find out more, of course, Computer America, you can check out this section totally dedicated to Ralph. It will also be on the main site, where we will still post everything everywhere just like you're used to. It's just now we have a little corner right there for him. So, ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for tuning in. Thank you for joining us, and we hope that you had a lot of fun and learned a little bit. I know that I did. And ladies and gentlemen, until next Friday, have a great day. Thank you so much. Catch you next time. Bye, everyone.